Okay, well, good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. And I really appreciate everybody getting on the video this morning. Hoping this is going to be very helpful to you. We've really enjoyed everybody's feedback. And what we'd like to do today, the goal is to walk through EstateAssist to run through sort of an average case and how we normally would expect users to do things, point some things out to you, show you a few things that users have specifically asked about, but also we want to give you some idea of some new features, some exciting things that we're doing, and then also a few things that are going to be coming up. We'll sort of give you a glimpse as to some things that'll be happening. All right, so what you see in front of you on the screen right now, excuse me, should be familiar to you. Of course, your user dashboard when you log into your EstateAssist account. Of course, reminder, everything that you're going to see today is made up data. Nothing here is from my personal practice. And on that note, I guess I should pause and introduce myself. I am Tom Gilman, for any of you who don't know me. In addition to being the founder of EstateAssist, I am a practicing Ohio attorney based out of Ashland County and practicing in a number of counties around the state. And so when we log into EstateAssist and we come to this user dashboard, the first thing that you're going to see that I think is a bit different than a lot of probate softwares and other kinds of software is that we do give you the ability to segregate your cases by category or status. So you see these different boxes down through the opening screen where these cases have been moved. And if you're not familiar, first, it's important to note you don't have to use those. If you want to leave everything in one box, you can do that by simply not categorizing them. But if you do want the categorization, then you simply, anytime you're in a case and the status updates, you can simply use this section to select a new status and update it. And then it's going to be in that place out on your dashboard. And, I just find that's helpful. It allows us to sort of see the status of all of our cases. It allows us to see if anything's getting bottlenecked at sort of a certain part of the process. So we can see if anything's starting to sort of pile up in one area. And it's really helpful when I sit down with my primary paralegal every couple of weeks and we just go through the case statuses to see where everything stands. We can really sort of go section by section and know what we're doing to get cases to completion. As we go down through, the other thing that comes up sometimes with our users is that, they wonder about the naming convention and how names should be listed in order to be seen correctly and easily found. And of course, first I'll point out we have added a search box up here, but also, we understand some users want to use last name, comma, first name, and others might just want to list names in the traditional fashion, first and then last. And EstateAssist does have a feature, an option that allows you to control that. And all you have to do is go to your admin screen. Now, if you look up here at the top of the screen, you'll see this link for admin. And if you don't have that when you log into your case, that simply means you're not an administrator yet for your firm. When you set up your account, your first attorney account was an administrator account by default. That account can then allow other people to serve as administrators. And just to be clear, there's no additional cost to that. There's nothing to it. You could have as many administrators as you want. And so if we click on this and go into the administration page, of course, that's where you can invite additional users in your firm, and you can remove additional users from your firm. You can bulk reassign cases. So for example, if you had an attorney leave or change their practice area, you could take all of their cases and transfer them to another attorney in the firm automatically without having to go in case by case. And then here we see you can change administrative privileges. So you can add additional people to be administrators simply by selecting them and then clicking Add Admin. And that's going to go ahead and make them administrators. A couple other benefits that come with administration. They can see all the active cases, regardless of who the attorney is in the firm. They can also see all the archived cases and close those up as necessary or delete them if you're done with them. And then they can affect firm settings and payment settings and something else we're going to see here in a few minutes. But if we go to the firm settings, this is where we get into the naming convention issue. So the firm settings allow us to list the address information for the firm at large, the administrative email address for the firm. We do have the option of two-factor authentication. So if you activate this, when any of your users go to log in, they will get a token emailed to them that they have to then enter into a secondary screen, which allows you to have sort of a second layer of security. But also down here, then we see what we're coming for. We can sort matters by last name, comma, first name. And so if you list it this way and everything's
that's fine.
alphabetized by that last name, if you uncheck
I ate
that,
some the other day.
things will alphabetize in the reverse. Okay. So as we go down through, let's go ahead and take a look at a case, and we're going to use Harriet's case today. And when we go into the case dashboard and start to see details about this case, the first thing that we notice is that up at the top, we have this section that allows for sort of top of mind information. We wanted just some important information about every estate to be listed here at the top, so that anytime you go into a case, you can easily remember who's the attorney on the case, date of death, fiduciaries, contact information, things along those lines. We just want that stuff really easily available, and you'll see it throughout the case as you're moving from screen to screen. Also, of course, we have the automated links to the website and the local rules for the court where your case is venued. And so we have this case for Harriet set in Hamilton County because Harriet Beecher Stowe did live in Hamilton County for a while. And so these links will automatically take us to the Hamilton County Probate Court and to their local rules. And by the way, I'll pause for a moment and just let everybody know, one of the great things about having this great size of users across the state who are really engaged and doing a great job is that you all help us sort of crowdsource information. And so, for example, the other day we got an email from somebody who let us know that their local probate court was changing their website address. And things like that are really helpful. Anytime you come across something new in your practice, something that a local court is doing or wanting, or just a new idea you have, we want to hear about it. As you're going to hear several times today, much of what EstateAssist has become has been in large part due to the great feedback of our users and telling us things they want. You cannot do enough to tell us what you want. We really want to hear it. All right, so once we've created a new case, and just to be clear, we'll go back out to the dashboard for a minute. You create a new case just by clicking this New Matter button up here. And of course, you enter the name, and then you select who the attorney is, if you have multiple attorneys in your firm, what kind of case it is. Right now we're only offering probate estate administration, but that's going to change in just about a month here. And then you can select if it's just the attorney and the person creating the case having starting permissions, or if you want everyone in the firm, the attorney and all the support staff to have permissions. So again, going back to Harriet's case, once you've created a case, of course, much of this information is not going to exist yet. And so you're always going to start by going to your case details, which is where you are entering just general information about the case. I always tell users, you're probably going to come to this screen about 2 times in the course of the administration. And the first time is going to be on day 1. You've created a new case. You're going to open this screen, and you are going to start filling all sorts of information that you have from your client about the case. Specifically, of course, the decedent, the county where the court is located, testate, intestate, the decedent's information, biographical and residency information, things of that sort. We'll go further down in a moment, but there are a few things you won't have on day 1, right? You're not going to have the case number in all likelihood unless you have a local court that lets you call in and get a pre-released case number. And then you're also not going to have like the dates of admission to probate and things of that sort. So those are things you're going to come back to later on. Let's take a look at estate account for a moment. You're going to see some pretty significant changes today with regard to bank accounts and the estate account, some pretty neat things that we've implemented. But, estate accounts are pretty valuable in the process of estate administration. But every once in a while, I'll have a user contact me and say, hey, we have an estate where we're not opening a separate estate account. We're using our IOLTA account or our fiduciary IOLTA account. And that's great. We do the same thing at my firm from time to time. I would encourage you to still reference that as your estate account. Now, you don't have to put in your IOLTA account number. You can leave that blank, but just designating a name. If you want to use IOLTA estate account or just estate account, it really doesn't matter where the account is. In theory, it could be a shoebox under your desk, though I wouldn't suggest doing that. But it's just the idea that there is a place where the funds from the estate are going to be held and then distributed from. And so, we do encourage you to, even if you're using IOLTA, list something here so that you have sort of that in and out as the administration's going on. More on that later. Of course, as I said, decedent information, and then we come to surviving spouse, if there is a surviving spouse. Now, this is a new change this week, and it was one of those things that I've been tinkering with EstateAssist since its infancy, and it just never occurred to me until recently that we're making users type in the address of the decedent and then the address of the surviving spouse, and obviously those are almost always the exact same. And so we went ahead and added this line with this checkbox now. If you have a surviving spouse, you can enter their name, and then if it is the same address as the decedent, which it more than likely will be, then you can simply click that. And when you save this screen, the address will auto-populate for you. So I didn't type in any of these fields, the address through zip code. That all automatically got pulled down when I saved the screen. Okay. Another thing that is somewhat new, and this was based on a request from a user, and she is on the chat today. I see her on here. Sometimes people say, look, we don't have a surviving spouse, but we want some kind of reference on the 1.0 to the spousal situation. So maybe they want to put, spouse previously deceased, or spouse Calvin Stowe, deceased on, May 1st, 2001, whatever it might be. That's what this section is for right here. Alternative spouse text. If you click this and type something in this field, that's going to show up on your 1.0 in that first position on the front page. So this is for you to be able to reference information about the spouse other than simply filling in his or her name. Okay. Of course, then we have some questions that go at the bottom of the 1.0. You're just checking the applicable box and whether or not that surviving spouse is a vested beneficiary to determine if he or she should be on the back of the 1.0. And then, of course, we can select if that spouse is also a fiduciary. And if you do that, if the spouse is also the fiduciary, which, again, not uncommon, you select the title, and then you can leave the fiduciary section blank. It's going to automatically fill with the information from the spouse. That checkbox is going to bring everything down when you save the screen. If you happen to have a circumstance with co-fiduciaries, and the first one is the spouse and the other one is just a third party, then the second fiduciary you would put down here in the co-fiduciary section. So in that example, you would mark the surviving spouse as fiduciary, skip the fiduciary section here because it's going to automatically fill. And then you'd go down and just fill in the co-fiduciary and you'd have both. And again, section at the bottom of that to determine if that co-fiduciary is also an otherwise interested person. We'll see why that's important here in a moment. The next section is our bond information section. And, this is something that sort of unintentionally has caused a little confusion for people. We build a lot of automation into EstateAssist. One thing that people sometimes ask is the bond information, the estimated assets on the front of the 4.0, do those automatically populate from the receipts? So as you enter receipts, are they being calculated and put in the front of that 4.0? And the answer is no. And that was intentional because by and large, a lot of times we don't have all of the asset information at the time that we're drafting the 4.0, right? If your practice is like mine, you're probably trying to get those initial pleadings done in a pretty short period of time to get that estate kicked off and started and get your fiduciary appointed. And sometimes we don't have the full picture of financials. And even if we do have them, we may not be in a position to enter them all yet. Gathering all those bank statements and property values and things, we may not want to go get all those receipts entered on day one or week one. And so, given that the front of the 4.0 is really a good faith estimation of the assets as a starting point for determining bond, we just treated it that way with this section. So you're simply making an estimation of these values, and this section is going to populate the front of that 4.0. And then, of course, your actual receipts will be entered as you have that information, and that's going to populate other things like your 6s and 13s and 5s and so on. And of course, there's a place here to enter the bond amount, which not only then gives the 4.0 request for bond, but also the actual bond form so that you can submit that to your bonding company. And then, of course, we have a place here for anything that might cause for the waiver of the bond. And then we come to a section on appraiser information. And whenever I walk through this with new users or show people about this, this is a great time to pause and point out to people, I use the same appraiser in an awful lot of my cases. And he does a great job, and he's respected by the court. And if you're using web-based software as we are, your browser should have a setting somewhere that allows for autofill options. And so, in a situation like this, we can clear a few of these fields out. And, when we come to this, since we enter him regularly, when I click here and I start to type his information, I just click on that and it's going to fill automatically. And so you can easily do that where things that you do often can automatically be done for you. All right, once we've entered our case details and saved them, the next thing that we would expect a user to do, and that I would do in my work, is go to the interested person screen. Now, when you open this screen for the first time in a case, you should have potentially some people listed here, more often than not probably, because if you've entered a surviving spouse in the case details, they will automatically be pulled over here and created as the first person. And if you've entered any fiduciaries that are also otherwise interested persons, they're going to be pulled over and entered in here automatically. So you should not have to add them again as interested persons if you've checked the correct boxes on your case details screen. So when you come here, you'll have them, and then of course you can start adding other interested persons. And interested persons are added, of course, through this button up here. We click on that, it gives us a new interested person screen, and we can set some kind of salutation designation, of course, their names. If they're serving as a trustee, if you have a trust that is inheriting, then you would type here trustee of the, whatever trust, and however you like your naming convention for trusts, you would go ahead and enter that here. And so then it would pull the name. So if we had Joe Smith and then trustee of the Atticus Finch Trust, it's going to then pull all that. And on the forms, it's going to put Joe Smith, trustee of the Atticus Finch Trust. We also have the ability to mark people as deceased. And once again, one of our users made a great suggestion. They like to sometimes note that if somebody's deceased, they still want to tell the court if there are no issue for that person. So the court is not confused as to whether or not there's a lineal descendant issue. And so because of that, we've added in this checkbox. So you can mark somebody as deceased. You can also ask the software to point out on the 1.0 that they do not have issue. Then we can enter their contact information, any other personal information they'll give, relationship to the decedent. If it's a minor and you're going to be submitting things to them, care of an adult or something like that, then you can fill in the care of section, and then their relationship or other 1.0 issues down here with the checkboxes. We also have the ability for indentation on the 1.0. And this is to allow what I refer to a lot of times as nesting, that I like my 1.0s to lay out, like if I have a deceased person, I want them listed, and then I want their descendants to be below them, but indented a little bit. And so you have the ability to indent 1 or 2 tabs with selection here, just to create that nesting effect. As we go back out to our interested person screen, now we see people that we have entered in here already, and we see the order set over here. The ordering happens automatically as you create people, but then you can change it, change up the order as you wish, and save that, and everybody's going to recategorize. And we know ordering can be really important, just the way your documents flow and how you think they show up. And so we want that to be an option for it. And we'll see ordering in a few things today. If we've entered our case details and our interested persons, we are up and running with a lot of pleadings populated already. And so we can go to our pleading screen to start seeing our court filings. And the first thing you might notice about the pleading screen this week is that we changed the layout. We had a lot of users telling us with the first iteration of EstateAssist, where we had standard forms first and then local forms below them. A number of users were saying, hey, out of sight, out of mind. If I go into the screen and I only see the standard forms, sometimes I only print the standard forms and I'm forgetting locals down below, and then I'm having to refile with the court. And so we heard that. Some people asked about moving the local forms up to the top. We stopped short of that because you look at a county like Hamilton here, there are an awful lot of local forms that you may not use ever or very rarely, right? I mean, we don't need to disinter remains very often or things like that. And so we didn't want to just put that at the top and have you have to scroll past those time after time to get down to the standard ones too. So we decided side by side was sort of a better option. And so the other nice thing about that is it has some things sort of showing up side by side. So when we go to the initial pleadings, the 1s through 4s, we're also seeing over beside us that there's a separate 4.0 for Hamilton. There is a fiduciary acceptance for Hamilton, things like that. So it keeps us in the neighborhood, allowing you to sort of see side by side. We are working on a project to try to identify and mark somehow those local forms that are most common or primary to cases, so that as you're working on a local case, again, you have to know that a 4.0 is needed in Hamilton. We don't want you to have to go searching through every time, and we don't want it to be lost in the mix. So we're working on some ways to sort of make those important ones more distinguishable or stand out. But we've entered our case details and our interested persons. And I like to point out at this point, we haven't gone through and had to say, put this on that document, put this on that document. I know some other software, including some software that's been very good in the past, has called for that everything has to be designated to a place. And sometimes I'll have a user sort of surprised by that. Hey, where do I tell it where to put these people? And the answer is you shouldn't have to. I mean, our belief is if you define a person as being a child of the decedent and a vested beneficiary, the software should know that they go on the front and back of the 1.0. And so we don't require you to point out where things go. The software should be smart enough for that. So everything you've seen so far, all the screens that we've gone through, is all we filled in. And with that, we can start opening pleadings, and they're going to automatically populate. And if you open up a pleading and you're not seeing it automatically populated like this, you need to email us and let us know, because maybe you're having some kind of problem with your browser or your PDF software, and we've got ways to help you with that. But everything should automatically populate. And so we have our 1.0 here, and notice we have some examples of the different things. Our spouse, of course, gets the first spot. We have a couple deceased interested persons. We marked one as having no issue. We nested some children beneath another one. We've got our boxes checked. We've got our people on the back, things along those lines. A couple other things that I'll point out to you. One here is a lot of the pleadings have this sort of hidden centered field below the case caption. And that is there to allow you to enter amended if you're amending any of your pleadings. We know that happens from time to time. You've submitted something and you realize you need to resubmit it with some change. So a lot of our documents have that sort of hidden amended field so you can easily mark that. And by the way, that's a great example that if you have specific, unique things that you often see on your pleadings, you say, gee, I'd like a field here. I'd like some automated text to pop up there. We want to hear about that. Okay, we really want to, and I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit. The other thing that we have some hidden fields on at this moment, right up here, we have a couple of fields where you can enter information. And, the reason for that is something that we're working on at the moment. We do recognize that some estates, maybe even a lot of estates, use AKAs, right? Other names for the decedent, because you're wanting to keep title clear, you're wanting to make financial institutions happy, things like that. And this main field at the top where the case title goes is, not always long enough for all those. We're playing with a couple ideas about whether or not to make that text size dynamic, or whether or not to use like these sort of little side sections to give expanded AKAs. These are here now that you could type in by hand, but we are working to automate the also known as feature so that you'll have a way to simply enter it once and have all of your documents populate. We're just trying to figure out the best way to make that in an attractive and convenient way that courts are going to like. Once we go back out, we can see some other pleadings. Of course, our application, our 2.0, fills in with all the information. All of your waivers on your pleadings page will have everybody listed. So there'll be group waivers in case you have people come by your office to sign them, or you send an executor or other fiduciary out with waivers to get signatures. All the ones on the pleadings page have the group in them. We'll see personalized ones here in a few minutes. All right. We mentioned, of course, we also have our local forms over here. Okay, those are all populating. And then I'll also point out, while we're talking about local forms, we do have this button up here toward the right for all local forms. And this really came out at Pliskin Institute last year. When I was there for the CLE, the judges panel got to talking about the fact that sometimes local courts really benefit from attorneys bringing in pleadings that they got from another court that had a local form on it. And then, you bring a form from Hamilton County into Cuyahoga, and Cuyahoga says, hey, that's really helpful. Maybe we'll want to make it a local form because it speaks to some issue that a different judge has seen as important. Well, with that in mind, we created this all local forms feature. And what it is this screen that has all of our local forms on it. And currently that's 20 counties and about somewhere in the 600 to 700 local forms range. And we'll have some more dropping here soon. We are on our way to having every local form in the state. That is a very important part of our design. We will have everything, but they're all on here and they're all designed to pull the information for your case. Okay, so if you wanted to grab something off of here, let's just say affidavit in lieu, I don't know what this is, but this form from Butler County, but notice it pulls all of your case information. It references it as Hamilton County. It puts Hamilton County's judge name on it. It puts all of your case information. So we've taken those local forms and built them out with your case wherever it is. All right. So that's what the all local forms button is. By the way, I'm sorry, one more thing I'll point out there. We know that's a long screen. Remember that when you're using a browser, you have the ability to simply hit Control F, and that's going to give you a search box. And you can start typing into it, and it's going to let you search and find, whatever phrase you're looking for. So if there's some certain topic that you're wanting, you can search it and it's going to take you down to it and you'll be able to find those things. Back out to our case dashboard. If we've opened a case, we put in case details and interested persons, we can open those initial pleadings. The next thing to start doing is to deal with the stuff, right? The assets and the disbursements of an estate administration, all the money and value that goes in and out in what we do. And the receipt screen is probably the center of our biggest changes over the last couple of weeks, and a lot of response to user feedback, which is why it's so important that you let us know what you like and don't like and what you want. So as we go to our receipt screen, we immediately start seeing some different layout and different views of things. All right. Maybe the first thing that catches your eye is across the top, we now have these different buttons for adding new receipts. In the past, we had one add new receipt button. And, you know, the problem with that is that when you opened it, you have all the questions, all the different things for every kind of receipt. And that was even made worse for us than other software, because I know other ones had busy screens too, but it was worse for us because we're trying to do more automation, which means we have more questions. And so putting all that in one screen was making for a lot of scrolling and trying to find things and having to read through things unnecessarily. And so we were sensitive to that. We saw that need. It was coming up in our testing and interviews, and then you all were great in letting us know in last month's survey. So what we've done to get past that is we've taken the different types of receipts and we've given each one its own button. And the really nice thing about that is when we click to make a new one, that's what we see. Now, this screen has some other things below it, but so many of the questions, it's just based around that asset type. So you immediately start in saying, okay, here we selected vehicle or similar asset. All right, is it a car, a boat, a motor, whatever? Year, make, model, VIN. You know, we're right into entering the information that's going to create that receipt for us. And then down here, we get into some of the other questions. Of course, you still select whether you want it on your inventory, newly discovered assets, or neither by just leaving those unchecked. And then you can check that it's a vehicle going to a surviving spouse or a boat or motor going to a surviving spouse, of course, by statute. And then we have some more 9C information. And if there's a buyer, we have the buyer. Here's another great little tool that was suggested by one of our users. If you're anything like me, you've gotten to the day of bringing in a client to sign a title to transfer it, and you look at your paralegal who knows a lot more about what's going on in the case than you do, or if you're one of the paralegals on the call today, you know what I'm talking about. And you say, where's the car title? And you start looking in the file and this and that. And we've kind of had an internal tool at our firm to try to track those, but one of our users suggested, why don't we just build that in? So you can now mark who has the original title, where's the location, just make it easier to track that kind of thing. Great little feature that somebody thought up and suggested. So we enter that information, we have our vehicle entered. The next section down is the next thing that you'd probably do when you're first entering an asset. So you're going to put in the asset specific information. And then a lot of times you're going to mark what is the intended or expected disposition of this asset. And we've switched this to side by side to kind of create more of a binary feel to it. Are we going to transfer it in kind, or are we going to sell it, right? One of those two things is going to happen with this asset. And if we're going to sell it, of course, we see these different questions about how we're going to sell it. Those are going to look familiar to you from the application to sell personal property and from the fives, right? Over here on transfer in kind, though, we have some automation to make this a lot easier for you. If you're expecting to transfer an asset to a recipient, you have 6 drop-downs that are automatically populated with the interested persons, the living interested persons. Okay, so you can give to more than 6 people, all right? You can always go to your disbursement screen and create more disbursements, just as you've done in the past. But we thought 6 is going to cover an awful lot of cases. If you contact us and say, boy, I have a lot of circumstances where 8 people inherit a house, fine, let us know. We'll consider expanding it. But we wanted something that didn't get too obtrusive for the screen. So you can select who's going to receive something, and then the interest they're going to receive. And we have just a lot of fractions and percentages. All right, we're not trying to be limiting, but we wanted to create something that was automated and did the math for you. And that's a lot harder with a fillable field. Drop down tends to make that really powerful. So you can select who's going to receive and what interest they're going to receive. And then of course you save this screen. Now, as we start doing those things, we've created some example assets here. We start seeing things pop up over here that are super powerful. All right. We make the distinguishing analysis, so to speak, between receipt-specific transfer documents and documents that are designed for all of the receipts. Okay, so let's look at some examples. Receipt-specific. The first two things we have here are a vehicle and a boat, which we mark to go to the spouse by statutory right. Okay, both of those are marked that way. Here's the boat that's checked. Since we know that about these specific vehicles, we have created affidavits for them. Over here under this distribution section, we click affidavit, and there's your affidavit for the vehicle that's going to the spouse. It just pulls it automatically from the data that you entered into that receipt, and it fills out the affidavits. You can easily give it to your surviving spouse, and they can take that down to the title office to claim their vehicle. I know we can just send people to the title office, tell them to do it themselves, but since we're entering a lot of this information anyway, even with the surviving spouse vehicle, right, for the 6.0 and one of the 5s requires that, we might as well give our client the benefit of automated documents and a little better service from our firms. Similarly, we have the boat. The affidavit automatically creates for that, or for the motor, all right? And so since we're entering this information, or if we want to enter this information, we get those affidavits automatically created. Similarly, we have this Toyota Tacoma that is not going to a surviving spouse. We've entered the description information up here and a couple of things down here in the 9C for their details. And we mark this one as being sold to Bob Smith. And so when we go back out, we have a 9C. Well, this is Hamilton County. It's actually technically a 9.4, but it automatically is filled in and ready to go. All right. So you start seeing those documents that are receipt specific. That would be different than, say, an application to sell personal property. If we are selling personal property, we go out to the pleadings page to that application. It's going to list all those things that we're asking the court to give us permission on. But these things are the receipt specific ones. Of course, real estate is another good example. So let's take a look at real estate. And let's point out a couple things about this. First, I want to mention that even though we've gone to receipt-specific screens, you can change it. I know that there are some things that are just weird, right? You say, I don't know if that's actually intangible personal property or other. That happens sometimes, and you prepare it, and then you go to somebody else in the firm, and they say, wait a minute, I would change that. You will have the ability to change things, even if you've selected one kind of receipt. So I could take this piece of real property and change it to a financial account or a vehicle or something like that. And of course, then when I save this, it's going to change all my questions to the ones that are specific for that kind of receipt. But here we have the real property screen. Again, nice and trimmed down, not scrolling through pages and pages. We just enter the information specific to real estate, the description, the parcel number, the address, the certificate of transfer number, if we want to have a certificate of transfer, if we're going to. Prior instrument reference, we want that to populate on a document. And then, of course, our property description, our survey. Now, on that note, with real estate, we have the ability down here on the 6.1, 13.1, and 13.2 to be more specific about how the real property description shows up on those documents. I know that different courts, different counties, and different law firms have different practices about this. Some people just say the real property at 123 West Main Street, and they leave their pleadings at that. Other people want to reference it as an exhibit. And so you have the ability to do that, make something an exhibit, give that exhibit a name or number, and it will reference it that way as being an attachment. And then yet other firms say, no, we want the description to be right there in the document, the actual property legal description. Now, sitting here today, this says maximum of 500 characters. We've heard from you. You know, that was an early on restriction that we had created because, you know, expanding out the documents to pages and pages had some, you know, just we were working through that process when we first launched. We now go dozens of pages on our 13s, and I forget how far out our 6.1 goes. We've got a lot of space now. So we're going to take that guardrail off. You can have as long a descriptions as you want. All right. So somebody just posted a question in the chat asking if you change an asset type. So if I go up here and change this from real property to vehicle, boat, etc., and then we change our mind back, will the information still be there? And the answer is yes, Tammy. If I change this and save it, then I'm going to get car questions that are empty. But if I go back to boat, it is still keeping this information back in the database, and it would come right back out. So you can change back and forth, and you're not going to lose your data from doing that. All right. And again, of course, with real estate, we have down here the ability to mark it as being transfer in kind or sell. And so we have that. We've marked these as going to people. And so as we go back out here to the screen, once again, we see receipt specific distribution documents. We have our 12.0. It's going to create automatically with the questions checked, with our certificate of transfer number filled. We have our 12.1, which marks, okay, we marked that it was going to go these 3 people at these shares. There's their addresses. And then on the next page, it's got the property description. It's got the prior instrument reference. It put us in as preparing the instrument and so on. Also here, this is Hamilton County, so we have a 12.2. That's a local form, but we've gone ahead and automated it to pop up when you create this. And, you know, always point out to us if we've missed one of those. We're trying to make everything as automated and county specific as we can. So that's why that's there. So, you know, hopefully you understand this distinction between receipt specific and broad deal with everything receipts. And that's important because if you go to the pleadings page, you're not going to have these personalized. And we had to do it this way because, as an example, I had a user contact me a couple weeks ago, and it was right after we had created this automated 9C feature. And they said, hey, I just got done entering almost 30 automobiles in one estate. Please tell me I don't have to go type those all into 9Cs. I said, no, you don't. Just click who you want them to go to, and all the 9Cs will be right there for you. And so they did that. They just went through and clicked all those sections for transfer in kind and who they're going to go to. They saved those screens, and their 9Cs were all right there, ready to print, ready to go. So that's why I make those things receipt specific. That stands different than, say, like 6.0 and 6.1, right? These are all assets. So these populate automatically with all your receipt information. All right. Going back to the receipt screen, the next thing, and again, this came from some friction and some challenges for our users with the old screen. You know, after being just too long and too bulky, we had that section for disposing of assets. And, you know, it had all these questions about gross receipts and net, or gross proceeds and net proceeds, and what date, and check if it went into the bank account and so on. And that was just clunky and a little difficult. And we didn't want that to be our user's experience. And so we've gone through to streamline that quite a bit. And the first thing that we did to streamline things is just make it easier to jump to that section. So as you're working on a case and you're sitting here, you bring up your receipts, and let's say that, you know, let's say that the household personal property, well, let's go with the real estate. That's a better example. And I know we had checked this to go to people in kind. We'll ignore that for the moment. But let's say that this house sold, and so we now need to dispose of it as having been sold. Let's say that deal closed yesterday, and you know, we've just received our check and so on. You now have this hot link over here for disposing of any asset. And so we click on that, and we're going to jump straight to the asset disposition section. Now, this is on that real properties page. See, that property information is up here. But it's jumping us down to it automatically. You click this and you're going to jump straight to it so that you don't have to go scrolling down through and finding it. It's going to be right there. And by the way, we've given you a new save button right next to it too, so you don't even have to go scrolling to find a way to save it. And once again, we wanted a binary choice here. We come to the asset disposition. The simple question is, did you transfer it in kind, or did you sell it, liquidate it, deposit it? You know, all those are fairly synonymous in our mind. And so if it did transfer in kind, as we noted on this asset, right, we want to dispose of it, we had marked it to go to these three people right here, then we can now mark that it was transferred in kind. So we made the application to the court approved it, we got that order, that certificate of transfer yesterday, we can now mark that's been transferred in kind. Now, you'll see there's a date field here. If you want to specify the date that that transfer is approved, go for it. But it's going to automatically default to the day that you check this. And in probably about 99% of cases, that's going to be fine. Because the only time the date is really important is if you have multiple accountings and you happen to have transferred it right before the end of an accounting period. And so in this situation, the vast majority of times, you can simply check this and save the screen, and you're going to be done. It's just automatically going to say, yep, that got transferred out to the kids. We're finished with it. Alternatively, you can mark things as being sold. Now, again, we have a few questions down here, but notice what we've done. We've created a lot more defaults because, you know, we'd have people say, why do I have to enter gross proceeds if the proceeds were the same as the original value? I don't want to re-enter that. That makes sense. Or why do I have to enter gross and net proceeds if those are the same? You know, if my receipt is a Social Security check for $2,000, it's going to be the same number all the way down through. I don't want to keep entering it. And that's very fair. Similarly, they say, why do I have to worry about the date of liquidation or deposit? If I'm doing one final and distributive account at the end, it really doesn't make a difference what date these things happened, as long as it all happened within the time period. And we agree with that. And so, you know, these questions now all default to things. So if I check this, the value of proceeds is just going to default to the original asset value. So you only enter something in here if it's different than the original value. So if we sold the property for more or less than its original value, then we would update it by entering something here. The liquidation date is going to just default to today. If I check this box today, that'll be the liquidation date. Now, again, if it turns out that I'm behind a little bit and, you know, we have an accounting date that was April 1st, and this deal closed on March 10th, then yes, I'm going to add a date. But other than that, we're fine to just select, to allow it to automatically select today. Down here, we do have a place if the proceeds are less than the amount. The proceeds that get deposited are less than the amount that gets deposited is less than the sale proceeds. And this is just to allow the software to know that, hey, we didn't put it all in the account. So let's say the house sold for $250,000, but we only got $245,000 to put in the bank because there were $5,000 in closing costs. That's why you would mark this. It's just to tell the software, hey, our deposit's going to be a little smaller than the proceeds. And that way your estate account register will stay correct. And then one more automation that we've added. If you want simple entry of closing costs, then you can go ahead and put that here. And so just as a quick example, we had marked this property as being worth $224,000. I could leave, if we sold it for $224,000, I can leave the proceeds empty. But maybe I'm going to put, we only got $220,000. And then I might put, we got $4,000 in closing costs. And then I can put the title company name. And that's going to now just take care of everything automatically. And it's going to create a disbursement on my pleadings, on my 13.1, saying we got $224,000, we only received $220,000, and then there's a $4,000 disbursement to title company for closing costs. So I really think you're going to find this is much more intuitive now. And you could really, in most cases, just check the box and hit save, and it's going to work just fine for you. Now, while we're here, let's point out one more thing. We now just default to the idea that if you've sold, liquidated, or deposited something, it went into the estate account. And again, whatever you're using for the estate account, whether it's your IOLTA or a separate estate account or what have you. But we had a lot of users say, what if we want to use another account in the estate? Maybe we put some money in and out of the checking account, or maybe something got deposited there after death, but before we took over the estate and got control of transactions. You now have that ability. So back out here on the receipt screen, we had created 2 bank accounts, PNC Savings and Huntington Checking. And now if we go back into that disposition section for that piece of real property, when we go to mark it as sold, we can deposit it into any account we want. All right, so it's automatically going to default to the estate account, but you can deposit it into anything in order to track it correctly, and you'll have separate registers for each one. All right, I want to keep moving quickly. I know we're getting short on time. People have a day to get to. The next thing, maybe the most powerful new feature, I think this is going to save people a ton of time, is what we call Word document correspondence automation. All right. Estate administration, all probate work, and really all legal work involves a lot of correspondence. And quite frankly, I think in today's day and age, we need to do more, because it seems that clients and family members are more and more curious and even anxious about the status of their matters. And so more correspondence only helps things. And, we've done some estimations, and I think that even in a relatively small estate, we're doing a pretty large number of letters between the fiduciary, the interested persons, the court, and so on. And so in order to see how this is going to work, we're going to go back out to our dashboard for just a minute. We're going to go to that admin link that we looked at earlier, and we're going to go down to account management. We're going to go to correspondence settings. And this new screen you're going to see is broken down into a handful of different options. We have general miscellaneous correspondence, interested person correspondence, financial account correspondence, stocks and bonds, non-probate financial accounts, and non-probate real property. And I've already loaded some letters in here, example letters, but the way you load a letter, and by the way, there's a video that'll be posted on this later today, you can choose a file from your computer. All right, it's going to open up just like your computer does to find things. You can select a letter that you've prepared. It's going to show that it's ready to upload it. You can give it a name over here. You can select what bucket to put it in of the ones down below, and you can save it. And then it will pop up and show down here. It'll be saved into your account in any of these sections. And once you save it into your account, it is available for all of your cases. You don't have to do this for every case. You do it once and it's in there. And if you want, you can number them. And that's going to be important with the financial account letters. You'll see we marked one as number 1 and one as number 2. All right. Now you say, what is it to prepare a letter? Well, what it is you can take all of your template letters, and I'm sure everybody on the call today has dozens and dozens of template letters that you use for different things throughout an estate administration. Cover letter to the court, introductory letter to your client, a letter to the family, whether it's a testate estate or intestate estate, letters with waivers, letters with inventories, and so on. And you can take all those templates, and we're going to provide you, this will be downloadable from your account, this PDF that gives you a naming convention for variables. Bracket, bracket, space, the name of the variable, space, bracket, bracket. And we've got what each one stands for. And we have about 2 pages of these available to you now. And we may expand that over time. We may give you more as we build this out more. But you can take all of those variable fields, and you can even just kind of copy them like this, and start putting them in as space holders in your correspondence. And we'll have a video for you on this that shows you how to do it. And by the way, if you say, whoa, that's over my head, or we've got like 50 letters and we don't have enough time to do this, we do have a couple contractors we work with, and we probably have somebody that would be interested in helping you get your documents automated and prepared. So you let me know if you need some help with that. But you're going to prepare all your letters and save them and then upload them into your account as we just showed. All right. Here's the benefit of that. If we go back out to Harriet, and we're going to go back to receipts. Well, actually, first let's go to correspondence. So we have this correspondence icon now for our general and miscellaneous correspondence. We uploaded a Word document called miscellaneous filing cover letter, and we put in those bracketed placeholders. And now when we click on it, it's going to take us out to Microsoft Word, and it's going to open it, and all of our case information is automatically filled. Our case number, our court, our decedent, the court's address, all these things, all these were variables in the letter, and it pulled them and it personalized them to this court, this lawyer, this case, and so on. All right, let's go back out and let's go to the receipts. Financial accounts, right? On a case-by-case or asset-by-asset basis, we might need affidavits and transfer applications like 9Cs and 12s and so on. But when we deal with banks, we need letters, right? We need a letter that asks the bank, at least in my practice, we send an initial letter that says, tell us about the accounts, tell us about pay on death beneficiaries, tell us the values as of date of death, and so on. And then, we need a letter that asks them to liquidate it. And then we usually need another letter that asks them to liquidate it, and on and on. And so those now automatically pop up. Okay, when I created a financial account, I put in, again, streamlined screen. Look at this. That's all we need is just a couple questions answered. I entered the information. I entered the bank's name and address. By the way, in the next couple of weeks, you'll have a drop down. You can save banks that you commonly work with, because I work with the same banks on probably about 80% of my cases. So you'll be able to just save those rather than re-enter it every time. But we have that information in here. And once we save that, these letters automatically create. We don't have to select them. We don't have to add them. They're just going to be there. And so here's our letter number 1. And by the way, this is why I pointed out that we can select numbers for our letters for the financial accounts, because we wanted to keep this screen pretty, user-friendly. And so this column is set up to accommodate 5 letters right now. Tell us if you think you really need more than that in the average financial account. But right now we've got it set for 1 through 5. And so since we just opened this estate, I'll click on letter number 1, and it's going to automatically take us out to Word, and it's going to pop that up. And look at that. We have a letter to PNC Bank with all of our case information and all of our requests and so on. Okay. And so now we can start kicking out letters to banks automatically. No more going out of your probate software to your files and cutting and pasting or mail merging or anything like that. We have the ability to just kick out these letters automatically. We want all of your correspondence to become one click, one print. Let's go over to our notice and waiver screen real quick. Reminder that here, all of your interested persons automatically get entered when you created them, and they all have personalized notices and waivers and consent forms. And so here's the 2.1 specified to this person. And notice here, our interested person letters now automatically show up personalized to each of these people. So they each have the letter. So this example is the testate letter, introduction. We'll have an intestate letter. We have a inventory and appraisal letter, just on and on. You can have a bunch of letters that you can kick out automatically. Let me also say a word right here about something that'll be coming over the next month or so. We're going to be adding a lot more in the way of batch printing options. We do hear you, it's great to have the power of automation that we have at this point. We're very happy with it overall, but we understand that printing, it's just one extra step to have to, open this 2.1 for each person and print it. And so we are going to be adding a lot more in the way of batch options for like all the waivers at once, or, multiple pleadings like 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, 4.5, creating some versions of these things that allow you to print them all at once rather than one by one. I don't know that we're going to be able to get to like checkbox, pick them all every time, but I think we can create a lot more of the common groupings so you can kick those out easily. And we're working on the option for letters as well. You can just kick out all your letters at once. But that is Word document correspondence. And obviously that's going to open not just click and print letters for you, but it's going to open the door for us to create all sorts of new powerful automations when we can start using Microsoft Word to create editable documents. All right. And that's going to give you all the ability to personalize your documents more. So you don't have to just use cookie cutter pleadings or cookie cutter forms. You can make your own things and have the same automation powers. All right. Real quick, let's jump over to disbursements. Disbursements have remained pretty much the same. By the way, I will point out, just for convenience, we've put the buttons for receipts and disbursements on both screens, just reversing the order so that you can easily, start adding and, kind of jumping back and forth. We can still enter disbursements the same. The biggest distinction that's going to happen is probably next week, paid from estate account will become a drop down, just like the deposited into account became a drop down. So we'll be able to deposit into any of the accounts from a liquidated or deposited asset. You'll be able to disperse from any account. Okay, so if you had an estate where somebody passed away and they had checks clearing after they died, you'll be able to enter the date of death value of that account and then make the disbursements out of it to show exact tracking for those things. All right. Let's see here real quick. And of course, that takes us to our estate account register, which is automatically populating. Whenever we make a deposit into it from a liquidated or deposited asset, it's giving you a credit. Whenever we pay something out, we have a disbursement or a debit created. And you'll also have the ability to see your other accounts registers now. So since we can deposit and withdraw from those other accounts, we'll also have registers for those other accounts. Real quick, let's talk about accountings. We're going to wrap up here in a moment. I see a few questions on the chat. I'll answer those in just a minute. We do have, of course, your accounting screen with your options. You can create an account currently by clicking what type and start date and end date. We've heard you, a lot of people saying, hey, listen, if I'm only doing one file and distributive account, why do I have to pick a date range, right? It's just one more thing. It's just kind of a couple extra clicks that I don't like. We hear that. So we are going to add, just give me an account. You'll have those links very soon. And so when you're handling an estate, you say, look, I just want to account for everything. There's no start, no finish, no partial. Just give me one and let's be done. You're going to have those as automatic links in the next week or so. And so you'll be able to just open it, open your account and print it, done. But if you are doing multiple accounts, you'll still have the ability to create multiple accounts. And of course, if you're new to EstateAssist, this is what you should be seeing. Your 13.0 should populate with all of your information automatically. Your 13.1 should populate with all of your information automatically. Okay. So that's a quick run through for EstateAssist and some of the new features and things and some of the things that are coming. Please keep your feedback coming. Please let us know things. We want to hear from people and we listen to you. We are designing this to do the things you want it to do and your courts want it to do. Let me also say a quick word about courts. If you hear something from your local court that there's something they have a question about or don't like or whatever, we try to communicate with them, but we want you to let us know if you hear something. We had one of our users tell us the other day that a local court said, well, we think EstateAssist doesn't use our forms and we want you to stuff off our website. And I sent an email to that court and said, we absolutely use your forms. We download all of our forms that come straight from courts. Our standard forms come straight from the Ohio Supreme Court. Our local forms come straight from the websites of the local courts. We don't build them ourselves. We change a couple things like the case caption, or maybe add a couple more signature lines for convenience, but we do not build our own or change their content. And so, if there's anything like that a local court has a question or a concern or wants something changed, we want to hear from it, just like we want to hear from all of you. All right, we're going to run through a couple questions here real quick, and I'll stick around for a little while if there's anything else that I can answer. All right, some people, this is a big question lately. When are we getting guardianships, trusts, and adoptions? And I would tell you, you can feel very confident to have guardianships and trusts in the month of June here, hopefully early June. As we've shared before, We've been trying to perfect the process first. We've been trying to build and figure out what you all want in the incubator, so to speak, of estate administration. And then we can easily apply that or finish the other areas. But we didn't want to launch a bunch of stuff and then have to change things across every platform as we do. And so you're going to start having guardianships and trusts activated next month, and adoptions will probably follow just a little after that, as well as name changes. And just to be clear, there will be no change in price, no additional cost. Those things are just coming as part of the platform. And, you know, the things that you're seeing here, a lot of these have been built toward dealing with those. For example, guardianships, when we started getting the idea of accounts and deposits and disbursements, we had to do what we did today, being able to deposit into all accounts and distribute from all accounts as part of guardianship preparation, because you're going to have money in and out of all sorts of different accounts in a guardianship over a long period of time. And so some of these things were important to that process. All right, next question up here. We generally drop electronic signatures on forms in Cuyahoga County, which requires downloading and reopening and resave, then print. Is there any way to do this within EstateAssist? All right, great question. So I'd like to hear more from you. If you want to email me about what you're doing for electronic signatures. I actually sat down with a judge and clerk in a local county the other day. It's one of the cool things about doing the software is people start to ask me if I'll sit down with them and kind of talk about their court and what they like and what they don't like. And so a local judge sat down with me and gave me a couple thoughts, which was really cool. And we talked electronic signatures. And obviously this is, you know, kind of the next big thing in Ohio probate law and in software, I think. And we're all aware, I assume, that 2 summers ago now, July of 22, the Ohio Supreme Court said courts are supposed to go to electronic filing, at least make it available. And courts have been slow to adopt that. We're kind of keeping in touch with them. I did see that Ashland County Probate just released their rules on this a couple weeks ago. Here's where we are on it. We have been adding in all of our pleadings, we have been trying to add signature lines, fields, empty fields above signature lines. Let me see if we have it on this one. So, you know, we do have these fields that we've been adding above signature lines for courts that allow like a / type thing. If you're allowed to type in a signature, all right, you can do that. We're looking at convenient ways to connect this to something like DocuSign. I'll be frank, maybe I'm a little old school. I don't like that version of signature. I'd love to hear from you users if you say that local courts are okay with DocuSign. I'm curious about that. Here's what we think is the solution that every court will accept very soon or in the near future. We're working on an in-app portal where you will be able to issue your documents out to clients, out to interested parties electronically. They will receive an email, they will be able to log in, and they will be able to sign on their phone or tablet using a finger or stylus or something like that. And obviously we've all had that experience with something, you know. I just had that with one of my kids signed up for a sports league. I got an email, I signed on my device, I hit enter, and it sent it back to them as a PDF. We will have that functionality probably, I'm going to guess late this year, or around the turn of the year. We've been tinkering with it a lot in the background. Obviously, there's a lot of security features to it that we want to make sure are appropriate and cover all the bases. But to me, that's the best version of electronic signature, is that the court can see that a person specifically manipulated the document. And that's where we're heading. Now, again, let us know if you think that DocuSign is a great solution for you right now or something like that. That's cool. But that's what we want to ultimately offer in-app. Okay. And yes, I mean, with that in mind, you know, we've said from the start, we don't want to just build software that creates pleadings or fills boxes. We want to change the way you practice your work. We want to make it point and click. We want to make you enter things as few times as possible. We want to streamline and change the way things are done. Ultimately, our goal is that you don't have to touch a piece of paper if you don't want to. You're going to prepare things in app, you're going to send them out for signatures, you're going to get them back, and you're going to file them. And, we've got a ways to go to hear those things and figure those things out. We want to hear from you, but those are the kinds of things that we have in mind for this software over time. Question here. Good question, Jim. From a security perspective, is the information that you input saved on our server? And the answer is no, not on our server. All of your data is saved through the Amazon AWS cloud system. We have a lot of confidence in that. AWS is the preeminent software storage facility or set of systems in the world. We feel very good about their security. We do third-party, what's called pen testing, penetration testing. So we have third-party companies or a company that challenges our software, that tries to break in, that opens an account to get in and try to tinker and see what they can do with data. We feel very secure in those things. With that said, you can get all the benefits of EstateAssist. You can use it, produce all your documents, do everything you want without ever entering a vital piece of information like a bank account number or social security number. Ultimately, your pleadings go on the public record anyway. Whatever you would feel comfortable putting in a pleading, you can put in EstateAssist, and it's going to work fine. And then, if you want to just wear a belt with your suspenders, that's great. Put in your accounts, PNC bank account number 1, and then just keep your 45D on your local computer. And there you can mark what PNC bank account number 1 is, and you can take that to your court, and that stays off the public record, and you can keep it on your local computer. And all you will ever enter into our system are names, addresses, and those public identifiers that you're comfortable with. You do not have to enter personal identifiers if you don't want to. But yes, I am completely comfortable with our system, and we believe AWS is as safe a system as can possibly exist. Next question here. Where can you get the variable list to make the Word document automations? Those will be posted probably later today or over the weekend, Dudley. Those will be, and what you'll have when you go into your admin screen and that screen that we showed you for uploading your letters, we're going to make a link there with the PDF. And we'll also be sending out an email to everybody that tells you where it is, and we'll tell you where to find the videos on YouTube to watch the process for creating it. All right, somebody here references that Cuyahoga County allows them to use DocuSign with proof submitted, and RabbitSign is another good one. That's great to know. Thank you. All right, I'll stick around for a few more minutes. Sorry, this went a little long, but hopefully it was really helpful to you. Please give us feedback. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to see in the future. We want to build software that works for you. But I'll stick around for a few minutes, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that anybody else wants to post, or you're always welcome to shoot us an email. Thanks for coming on today, everybody.